I had never told my son what his mother left in the old, worn, leather-covered savings passbook. I didn't hide it out of greed. I hid it because I had seen too many marriages turn into a money hunt. When a woman walks into the house with a sweet smile and calculating eyes. The day Evan married Talia, I locked the second-floor study, changed the lock, and put the passbook behind his mother's photo frame. I told myself, if she truly loves my son, she will never look for it. Tonight, I was having dinner at Jack's house, my close friend. A simple, warm meal. In the middle of laughing, my phone vibrated. Evan's name popped up, along with a missed call. I answered, my heart tightening. My son's voice trembled. Dad, she found it. She's trying to break the lock on your study door. The door is about to give. I looked over at Jack. He didn't ask anything, only placed a hand on my shoulder like a reminder. 3 years. I had been waiting for this moment, and I had prepared. Jack's house still smelled of grilled meat and garlic butter. Jack Rivera sat across from me, pouring more sauce onto his plate as he told a story about his grandson spilling an entire bucket of fishing bait in the garage. I tried to laugh along, but in my chest a thin string was pulled tight, like when a storm is coming, but the wind hasn't started yet. My phone buzzed on the tabletop. The screen lit up with Evan's name. I picked up immediately, not letting it ring a second time. Dad, my son's voice sounded like someone was squeezing his throat. She found it. I looked at Jack. He set his fork down, unblinking. Stay calm, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. Where is Talia? Right outside your upstairs study door. She brought lock-picking tools. She says I'm hiding it, that I'm helping you. Dad, the door's about to give. I didn't ask. Found what? Because we both understood. Lena's old leather-covered passbook wasn't worth money in the way people think, but it opened the kind of things that can save a person's life. I had kept it locked away for 3 years, not to keep a secret, but to wait for a moment when the truth would step out of the shadows on its own. Listen to me step by step, I said. Call emergency services right now. Say someone is deliberately trying to force entry into a locked private room in your father's house. You're afraid they'll break the door, and you need an incident report. But Dad, she's my wife. That's exactly why there has to be a report. I cut in, still not raising my voice. Move to where the porch camera can see you. Don't stand between the stairs and the door. Don't touch the tools. Say only one sentence. This is my father's locked private room. I do not allow you to break the door. Then stop. On the other end, I heard Talia's voice, sharp and sticky, like honey burned too long. Why are you calling your dad? I have a right to know. I'm family. Evan breathed hard. She's yelling at me. Dad. 3. I continued. Call Marlene Cho. Her number is in the dining table drawer, behind the car insurance booklet. Say this exact line. It's time to open the passbook. She'll understand. Jack was already standing, grabbing my coat without needing to ask. I ended the call and texted Evan one short line. No arguing. Call emergency. Wait for me. On the drive from Dublin to my house in Upper Arlington, the air had that November kind of cold, dry cold, that cut into your wrists. Jack drove, both hands fixed on the wheel. Street lights slid across the windshield in long yellow streaks. You sure about this? Jack asked, eyes still forward. Bringing the police into family business. I'm not bringing them into family business, I said. I'm bringing them into a break-in. That's the line. I called Marlene on speaker. She answered after one ring, her voice clear, like someone who'd been waiting. Walker, Talia is trying to force the lock on my study. Evan already called. Emergency. I want you here, and I want copies of the paperwork ready. I'm putting on my coat, she said. Don't open anything in front of her. Let Evan hear it from me. When the car turned onto my street, the flashing red and blue lights were already washing over the bare maple trees. A patrol car was parked at the curb. The front door sat slightly open, and the draft made the thin curtains flutter like quick breathing. I stepped out, my shoes hitting cold tile. A young officer walked up, asked my name, then looked toward the staircase. From upstairs, Talia's voice carried down less sweet, less performed, just irritated. How long are you going to stand there and let your dad control us? I crossed the threshold of my own house and saw a long scrape on the study doorframe. Small, but it said everything. Anyone willing to break a door today will break a life tomorrow. Evan stood at the bottom of the stairs, pale, gripping his phone like a lifeline. On the floor by the table leg lay a pry bar and a flathead screwdriver. I picked them up with a paper towel and handed them to the officer. "I want an incident report filed right here," I said. Talia came down 2 steps, her eyes flashing when she saw me. "What are you hiding in there?" she asked. I answered, "Not yours." The officer took notes, photographed the scrape on the door frame, then asked Evan a few short questions. My son answered like someone just pulled out of a riptide, his eyes darting up toward the study, as if afraid the door might burst open on its own. Talia stood by the upstairs, railing with her arms crossed, lips pressed tight, trying to hold onto a righteous look, but the bitter edge was already showing. "I want a report," I added, "and I want you to note clearly that she does not have my permission to enter that room." The officer nodded, polite but cold. He turned to Talia. "Ma'am, do you have any written authorization or a lease agreement related to that room?" Talia gave a mocking laugh. "I'm his son's wife. I'm family. Family doesn't replace a key," I said. The words came out quietly, but firm enough that Evan lifted his head to look at me. When the patrol car left, the house fell silent, as if all the air had been pulled out. Evan stood in the middle of the living room, hands shaking, while Talia stepped forward, her voice lower, now more dangerous. "You're overreacting. You want your son to get divorced over a door?" I looked straight at her. "I want my son to live like a free man, and freedom starts with knowing who's trying to pry open your life." Evan swallowed hard. "Dad, what's in that room? I've never seen you lock something up like that." Slowly, I took the key off the hook, but I didn't open the door. I just guided Evan down onto a chair, the way I used to when he had a fever as a kid. "Do you remember, Mom?" I asked. Evan nodded, eyes red. Talia took half a step back, like the name Lena might stain her plan. "Your mother didn't leave gold. She didn't leave a safe full of cash," I said. "She left a life ring. But a life ring only matters when someone is drowning." I told Evan about those last nights at the hospital. Lena was thin, but her eyes were still bright. She held my hand and said, very clearly, "Promise me, if there ever comes a day our son loves the wrong person, you have to have a way to pull him back. Don't win loud, win clean." Then she handed me the old savings passbook worn leather cover. The paper edges yellowed like late-season leaves. Evan frowned. "A savings passbook? Talia thinks it's money. But what's inside isn't money to withdraw," I said. "Inside is what your mother used to talk to you even after she was gone." Talia laughed, but the sound didn't reach her eyes. "How touching. But if it's an inheritance, I have the right to know." I turned to her. "You have rights to your feelings. You don't have rights to a dead person's property, and you especially don't have rights to the truth a dead person left for their son." Evan looked at me, voice thick. "How long have you kept this from me?" "Since the day you brought Talia home to meet me," I answered, not dodging it. "Because that day, she asked the price of this house before she asked what your mother liked to eat. And because 6 months later, she had you talking about family assets, like you were an ATM." Evan lowered his head. I went on, brief, not rambling. The loan for the luxury car, the payments jumping, the bills for new furniture, the hints about transferring ownership. "I wrote down what you told me yourself," I emphasized. "I didn't spy on anyone. I just watched the footprints of money and how people speak when they think they're about to touch it." Evan looked up, eyes wet. "What are you going to do now, Dad?" I took my phone and called Marlene. "Now," I said, "we let the paperwork speak, and we let your mother speak." Jack came back in. "Set a glass of water and some tissues on the table for Evan," he said softly. "Son, don't let anyone make you choose between your wife and the truth." Talia cut in, eyes sharp. "If you open it, I'll call a lawyer." Evan breathed hard, looking at me. Marlene arrived 20 minutes later, stepping into the house like someone who already knew every creak in the hardwood. She didn't look at Talia first. She looked at me, then at Evan, as if checking whether the boy was still standing. "I need everyone to sit," she said, "and I need her to keep her hands still." Talia curled her lip. "Who are you to give orders in this house?" "I'm Lena's attorney," Marlene replied, setting her briefcase on the table. "If you want to argue, argue with the paperwork." Evan swallowed hard. "Marlene, I don't understand. Dad said the passbook isn't money. Correct, she said. The passbook is the key. Tonight we're only confirming two things: who has the right, and who is trying to take something that doesn't belong to them. She opened the folder and placed a sheet with Evan's signature in front of him. Do you recognize this signature? Evan stared, going pale. A prenup. Talia cut in immediately. It was just paperwork. You signed it to get it over with. It's not just paperwork, Marlene cut her off. It clearly states Walker's assets and the assets Lena left to Evan through a trust are separate property. A spouse has no right to demand a transfer, no right to claim a share, and no right to access trust records without Evan's written consent. Evan turned to his wife. You told me this was meaningless. Talia lowered her voice, soft like she was soothing him. I just wanted transparency. I was scared you'd get taken advantage of. I heard the word taken advantage of and smelled the calculation inside it. I set my phone on the table and pulled up the doorbell video. There was Talia on the stairs, holding the pry tools, face flushed red. No more arguing was needed. Marlene glanced at it, then continued. 3 weeks ago, the bank sent a warning letter that someone had been asking about an old account in Lena's name. I told them to preserve the call logs. The person asking used her last name. Talia jumped up. I was just asking. You asked without permission, Marlene said. And tonight, you tried to break a lock. Both show intent. Evan looked like he couldn't breathe. You called the bank about my mom? Talia looked around for an exit. For our future. No, I said, because you thought your future was in a dead woman's paperwork. Marlene pulled out a sealed envelope and set it in front of Evan. This is your mother's letter. I kept it at her request. Inside the passbook is a safe deposit box code. That box does not contain cash. It contains the trust file, Lena's instructions, and a contingency clause. A contingency clause for what? Evan asked, almost whispering. If anyone tries to pressure Evan into signing a power of attorney, transferring ownership, or separating Evan from his family through threats, control of the trust shifts to an independent oversight mechanism until a court confirms Evan is acting voluntarily, Marlene replied. The harder someone tries to steal, the tighter it locks. Jack spoke up, slowly. You walked yourself to the courthouse door with a pry bar. Evan looked at me, eyes red. Dad, I need to see the passbook. Talia stepped forward, her hand lifting on instinct. Give it to me. Let me see. I didn't step back. I only said no. The mask dropped right then. Talia blurted it out before she could swallow it back. He's my husband. He has to be on my side. That money is ours. The room went dead silent. Evan looked like he'd been slapped. I saw my son's shoulders sag. Marlene closed the file. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Evan goes with me to the bank. Walker comes too. We open the box, read the letter, and document everything. The spouse will not be present for the opening. Talia hissed. I won't let you do that. I looked at Evan. My son was shaking, but his eyes had changed. He wasn't asking for permission anymore. He was waiting for an order. I gave a single nod. Right then, Evan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then handed it to me. A text from an unknown number. We can replace the lock on the study door tonight. Talia has scheduled it. The text on Evan's screen hit me like a hook, straight to the gut. We can replace the lock on the study door tonight. Talia has scheduled it. I looked at Marlene. She nodded, as if she'd expected it. This is no longer curiosity. This is taking. I called the unknown number back. A man introduced himself as a locksmith service in Columbus. I spoke slowly, clearly. I'm Hank Walker, the homeowner. I do not authorize anyone to replace the lock on my study door. If there's an appointment under someone else's name, I'm canceling it immediately. And I want you to note that you've been informed by the homeowner. He paused for a beat, then said, the booking is under the name Talia Walker. She said you agreed. I did not agree. I said, don't come. Understood, he replied quickly. I'll make a note and refund the deposit. I hung up. Evan stood like a statue. She was really going to do it. Son, I said, she's been doing it for a long time. It's just that tonight you finally saw it. Talia had heard. She came down the stairs, hair neatly pinned, face cold. Who did you call? The locksmith, Evan answered. You scheduled a lock change on Dad's study. Talia didn't deny it. She shrugged. Because your dad isn't transparent. I'm protecting my husband. Protecting him by changing someone else's lock? Marlene asked. I'm the wife. Talia snapped back. I have rights. Your rights end at the edge of your property, Marlene said evenly. This house belongs to Mr. Bide. Walker. Lena's documents are for Evan, not for you. Talia turned to Evan, switching to a soft, coaxing voice. Are you really going to let them divide us? Evan was trembling. But this time he didn't back down. You tried to pry a lock. You called the bank about my mom. You called a locksmith behind my back. Is that your us? She pressed her lips tight, then shot her eyes at me. You win. You want me to disappear from your son's life. No, I said. I want you to respect boundaries. Whether you stay or go, that's Evan's choice. Marlene closed her briefcase. I suggest we move the passbook and the letter to my office now. I have a private safe. Tonight, she'll try another plan. Evan looked at me, eyes red. Dad. If I'd opened it sooner. Bree. Dad Endisa, you don't owe anyone an apology for trusting, I said. But you owe yourself a clear decision. Evan turned to Talia. Get your coat. You're leaving my dad's house tonight. Talia gave a dry laugh. You're kicking out your wife over an old passbook? Because you just proved you'll break a door to get what you want, Evan said. I'm not sleeping under the same roof with someone who does that. Talia took a step back. If I walk out, I'm not coming back. Evan swallowed tears. You left the moment you picked up the pry tools. The front door swung open. Cold wind poured in. Talia stepped over the threshold, her heels clicking on the porch steps like a bolt sliding shut. Her car started and disappeared. Jack locked the deadbolt, drew the curtains, and pulled up the doorbell camera on my phone. He said, "Save everything." I immediately emailed the video and photos of the scrape to Marlene, along with the police report number. I didn't want to win with words. I wanted to win with something that had a timestamp and a signature. Marlene stood, but it's not over. She opened her phone and showed us a new notification. She just filed an emergency petition online, asking the court to order that Mr. Walker be barred from accessing the marital home due to emotional intimidation. Evan went pale. I felt my heart beat one slow, cold thud. And I knew this was exactly Plan B that Lena had predicted. Marlene's notification felt like a thin knife, no pain at first. But it turned the skin cold. Talia had filed for an emergency no-contact order, claiming I was emotionally intimidating and controlling my son. She wanted to paint me as dangerous, so Evan would have to choose between his father and his wife within 24 hours. Stay calm, Marlene said. Orders like this are usually temporary, and the court will look at evidence. We have enough. Evan leaned against the wall, eyes red, his hand clenched tight. She did this? Over the passbook? No, I said, because she needs to isolate you. Once you're alone, every lock is easier to pry. Jack brought out 3 glasses of water. He looked at Evan, voice low. Son, you're sleeping here tonight. Don't go back to her. Don't give her a chance to stage something. Marlene spread the documents across the dining table like a war map. I need a clean timeline. Tonight we have police, a report, photos of the scrape, pry tools, and the locksmith call. Everything has a timestamp. Tomorrow morning, I'll file a response and ask the court to consider the forced entry attempt before issuing any order. She handed Evan a sheet of paper. Sign this, confirming Mr. Walker never threatened you, and you're staying at your father's house voluntarily. I want your signature and a witness signature. Jack signed immediately, his handwriting unsteady but decisive. I signed last. I don't like paperwork, but I understand it's the only language that can speak to people who use emotion as a weapon. At exactly midnight, Evan's phone started buzzing nonstop. Talia called, then texted, then called again. Her voice in the voicemails shifted like weather turning, sometimes sobbing, sometimes biting. You're abandoning me? You're letting your dad manipulate you? Marlene glanced at it and shook her head. She's building an emotional record. Don't answer. I pulled a small wooden box from the cabinet and set it on the table. Inside was the old passbook, wrapped in Lena's handkerchief. Evan looked at it like something both sacred and frightening. Dad, Evan said hoarsely. Tomorrow. What if the court really issues the order? The court doesn't issue an order based on one-sided claims when there's a police report and evidence of forced entry, Marlene said. But to be safe, I want the passbook in my custody right now. I nodded. We went to Marlene's office downtown. She opened her safe, placed the passbook inside, and locked it 2 layers. When we stepped out, Evan looked at me. I feel ashamed. I brought her into your house. I put a hand on his shoulder. You're not ashamed for loving someone. You're only ashamed if tomorrow you still let someone pry open your life. Back at the house, Marlene received a notification. The court had scheduled an emergency hearing for the morning. She turned to me, her eyes cold but steady. Tomorrow, you don't talk much. You just present the evidence and let the truth do the work. I printed copies and clipped everything into a hard binder. The report, the photos, the call logs. I charged my phone and shut the door. I sat down in Lena's chair, listening to the wind touch the window. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just clear. And in that clarity, I knew the moment I'd been waiting for had arrived, not to humiliate Talia, but to pull my son out of the trap before it closed. We stood outside the county's small courtroom. Evan wore a light blue dress shirt, his hands trembling even as he tried to hide it. Marlene carried her briefcase. Jack came with us, steady as a post in the wind. Talia arrived late, hair perfectly brushed, eyes swollen but covered with heavy makeup alongside a lawyer she'd hired in a hurry. The judge looked at the emergency petition and asked Evan directly, "Do you feel threatened by your father?" Evan took a deep breath. "No, Your Honor. I'm staying at my dad's house because I chose to. Last night, my wife tried to force the lock on my father's study. The police filed a report. Talia's attorney spoke quickly about transparency and marital assets. Marlene set the report on the bench like she was laying down a brick. Photos of the scrape, the doorbell video, and the recorded locksmith call. The judge looked at Talia and ruled. The request for a no-contact order is denied. You are not to trespass on Mr. Walker's property, and you are not to interfere with Lena's legal files. If you continue to harass him, I will consider a protective order for him." Talia went pale. Evan said only one line, quiet but clear. "You chose to pry the lock." 30. We walked into the bank. The manager led us to the safe deposit area. Marlene presented Lena's authorization and the death certificate, then set the old passbook in front of Evan. "You're the one who opens it." Evan nodded and flipped the cover. The code and the small key were still exactly where they belonged, taped in place with yellowed tape. When the box opened, there was no gold, no cash, only a sealed envelope with Evan's name, a trust file, and a small voice recorder. Evan opened the letter. I stood still, listening to the paper whisper like dry leaves. Tears fell the moment he read the first line. Evan read aloud, his voice breaking. "My son, if you're reading this because someone demanded access instead of demanding kindness, then you've met the very thing I feared. You don't have to prove you're strong by enduring. You're strong when you set boundaries." He stopped, wiped his face. She wrote, "Don't let anyone use love as a key to open a vault. Real love doesn't need a key." Marlene pressed play on the recorder. Lena's voice came through weak, but clear, like she was standing right behind me. "Hank, don't get angry. You only need to show him the truth." "Evan, I'm sorry I won't be there. I'm leaving you a dignity clause. If anyone pressures you to sign, pressures you to sell, pressures you to cut off your family, control will lock down. You won't be stolen from while you're still breathing." Evan covered his face. I put my hand on his shoulder and felt him shaking. When we came back up into the lobby, Talia was waiting, her eyes fixed on the passbook. "Let me see it," she snarled. Evan stepped back. She lunged. Jack blocked her, and security moved in. Talia screamed, "It's all ours." Evan stared straight at her, tears still on his cheeks. "What's mine is the boundary my mother left me. What's yours is the door you chose to break." We walked out into the cold sunlight. I didn't feel victory. I only felt a promise kept fully. We left the bank without looking back. Evan walked beside me, his shoulders still shaking, but his steps had stopped falling out of rhythm. November wind pushed through my collar, cold enough that I thought I might hear the ventilator from the hospital years ago. But this time, inside that cold, something warm smoldered. The truth had been called by its real name. 2 weeks later, Talia filed for divorce, not out of remorse, but because she understood the door was locked. Marlene handled everything with the clean precision of a stitched wound. She asked the court to recognize the forced entry incident, requested a no-harassment order, and clearly separated every debt in Evan's name. Talia tried to request temporary support, but the judge looked at the car loan file, looked at the fact that she wasn't working, and shook his head. She walked out of the courtroom with purple lips and a hateful stare, but with nothing left to grab. Evan moved into my house for a while, not because he was weak, but because he needed a place where he didn't have to guess someone else's intentions. The first night, my son sat at the dinner table, stared at Lena's empty chair, and said softly, "I'm sorry I let someone pry open Mom's promise." I set a bowl of soup in front of him. "You didn't let anyone pry open your mother," I said. "You arrived late. What matters is you arrived." Jack stopped by every Sunday. He brought cornbread, sometimes with his grandkids in tow. The house found laughter again. Evan began sleeping through the night. He went to therapy, learned how to recognize sugar-coated sentences with a blade hidden inside. He asked to transfer to a project closer to home and cut down on overtime. Every time he answered a call from Talia and then hung up, I knew my son was learning a skill life rarely teaches, saying no without asking permission. One evening, Evan opened Lena's letter again and said, "Dad, Mom didn't want me living in fear. I want to do something for someone else." He suggested using part of the trust's investment income to create a scholarship for kids who lost their mothers to serious illness, exactly the kind of worry Lena used to carry. Marlene listened and simply smiled. "That," she said, "is how you keep money clean." When the divorce file finally closed, I took Evan out to the porch. A thin dusting of snow had settled. Evan said, "I thought money was what people were aiming at. Turns out they were aiming at trust." I nodded, and trust is only worth giving to someone who can keep their hands still in front of a locked door. If you're listening to this story and you've ever had someone demand rights before, they demanded kindness, remember this. Selective silence is power, but paperwork and boundaries are the real lock. Comment the city you're watching from so I know you're not alone, and tell me what you would do if the person you trusted most tried to pry open your life.